right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the last full week of instruction. I know some classes have instruction next week, but when it's coming down to the end, especially in architecture class, the final project always takes precedent. So a couple quick announcements about the plan for this week and next. First off, we have two more lectures. Today we'll be doing a plan line drawing. And then on Wednesday, we'll do a section line drawing. That gives you three total: elevation, plan, and section. For the final, you'll be picking two of those three to turn in. So this is, of course, all building toward your final as well. Hopefully you have at least placeholders for all four of your rendered images. Remember, we need at least a placeholder by now of all four of those rendered images. I know some of you have had some difficulty. We're going to sort those difficulty things out this week during our lab check-ins. Make sure we kind of resolve all the issues going forward. All that being said, on Monday at midnight, that's when everything is due. So I'm looking for those six things, the 4 renderings plus the 2 drawings. That encompasses everything that's due on Monday night at midnight. If you have a final or can't figure out with your schedule, you've got 2 finals, you're busy all day or whatever on Monday, and you'd like an extension until Wednesday at midnight, I'm happy to offer you the extension until Wednesday at midnight. But if you want it, I want you to email me and explain that these are the circumstances. This is why I need an extension until Wednesday. My goal there is that everything is done early in the week so that you can concentrate on all the rest of the exams, tests, and final projects that you have due. And it seems to work the best for students going forward. So that being said, we'll have lecture today. We'll have lecture on Wednesday. Next week, from our basically the whole time, so from 11:15 until 2:15, I'll just be here to provide help. So there isn't an actual lecture on Monday, it's just me providing help. And then obviously there's nothing on Wednesday because most of you by that point will have turned everything in. So there'll be basically 3 more meetings with us: today, Wednesday, and then the following Monday, which is the 5th. Okay. So that's kind of how we're moving toward the end. There's not a lot of time left in the semester. Those of you that are behind or have things that haven't been turned in yet, though it's probably not the group of you that's here, it's probably the people that aren't here right now that are behind. Try to get those things in, because those are going to affect your grade if you don't get those things in. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get started with Rhino and line drawings. Perfect. Let me just get organized here. And there we go. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've loaded up the file from last class where I established this view. But before we do anything, because this is going to be a very destructive process today, I'm going to do a save as. So I'm going to go to File and then Save As. And I do this live in lecture to emphasize the point. I don't just say it, we need to do it. So this is my master site ocean, and then we're going to say this is a floor plan. And I'll go ahead and click on save, and that'll save it for me. Yes, I want to save all the supported files. And I'm just realizing that my clicks aren't being shown. So let me turn those on really quick. Because I want to make sure you can see my keystrokes. All right. I just wanted to make sure that those were turned on so you can see my keystrokes as well. Okay, so this is saved. Master site, floor plan. Now, what I need to do when I start to think about a floor plan is I need to figure out where that floor plan should happen. And so I'm going to go ahead and switch back. Let's go to set view. I'm going to do a render 1. So we're back at this view, and then I'll kind of orbit around a bit so I can see what's happening in this particular view. Now, when I start to set up my floor plan, I want to see where that floor plan belongs. Now, typical height of a floor plan would be 4 feet above the floor. In my case here, because I have kind of a split level where we're going upstairs here, there's probably a happy medium spot where I can catch this building and catch the lower floor or the upper floor of this building, thereby seeing the stairs. So that feels like a little bit better spot to cut. So what I'll do is, just like we did with the section, I'm going to go ahead and give myself a layer. and we'll call this layer floor plan. And then I'm going to do a sublayer FP floor plan plane. We'll go ahead and make that active. And then I'm going to back myself out here and create a floor plan that goes around my building. Now, do I really need it to go all the way through the ocean? No, because my floor plan is not going to be anywhere near large enough to see that. So I can stick with a very basic floor plan. I'll make it large enough to go through my whole land mass though, right, like that. Then we need to start to adjust where that height belongs. So I'll select that plane and let's look at it in the right view. And now we can start to see, where do we want to actually cut this? So I've typed in move, and I'm going to move it up. And as I'm looking through the building, I want to think about where's a good spot to cut. So we can see here, right, we've got my levels. This is my lowest level. There's my floor on my lowest level. If I were to cut high there, I'd cut through the bottom of this floor, thereby seeing the bulk of my lower floors. Alternatively, if I move myself up, say to right here, I'd see this floor in floor plan, and this one here, I'd see more because I'm there. So either one of those is perfectly fine. It just comes down to a matter of preference. I do want to make sure that I'm not right in the middle of a stair. I think that would look awkward, so we'll go up a little bit, and I'll use that as my my plane here. So just like we did with the section, it's time to explode our blocks. So I'm going to type SEL block instance. That selects all of my blocks. And then I'll go ahead and type explode, and that'll explode all of my blocks. And this is why we're doing it on a separate file, because once we do this, we can't ever go back. So now that I have all of those, I'm going to go ahead and repeat SEL block instance. And there I have the couch. I'm going to go ahead. Am I cutting through the couch? You know, I'm going to move this up a little bit higher so I'm not cutting through the couch. Move it up to right there. There we go. Now I'm not cutting through the couch. So I'm just making little adjustments there. Okay, so one more time. SEL block instance, explode. And let's make sure nothing's selected. One more time, SEL block instance. No objects added to selection. That means I've exploded all of my blocks. That's perfect. Now it's time to go ahead and start the split process. So if I start by typing split, or I could go up to, I think it's under surface split. Maybe it's under transform split, edit split. There we go. It's going to ask me to select objects to split. I'm going to select everything except for that big plane right there. And I'm not going to worry about the ocean. The ocean doesn't need to be split either. And I'll go ahead and press enter. Then it's going to say select the cutting objects. Well, there's my cutting object. That was that large plane. And we'll go ahead and hit enter. And this is going to take just a little bit of time. And that was a very good question, or Anna. You have a first, second, and third floor that aren't connected. Should you just choose the first floor plan? You can choose any one of the three. I'm only asking for one plan view, so you don't have to do all three of the plan views. So pick whatever one floor you want. And if you want to do the first floor, great. If you want to do the second floor, sure. If you want to do the third floor, that's fine too. So it doesn't matter which floor you choose. Okay, so it's finished my split. And if I did it correctly, I should be able to come in here, for example, and select all of that. And if I were to type hide, we'd then be looking down. Let's go back to our rendered view here. Let me hide this plane too. We'd be looking down, theoretically, on a floor plan view of our building, like that. So that's good. We're getting somewhere. But what we want is just like with the section cut, we want it to work as though the rest of the building was still here. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and fill in the walls. They're going to look a lot better if I fill them in. So I have my floor plan. I'm going to create a sublayer, and we'll call this wall fill. Let me make that active. And I'm going to use my rectangle tool here. You turn on my endpoint snap. Like that. Surface from 3 or 4 corner points. We can fill that little section in there. Go back to my, and it doesn't really matter what tools you're using. And oops, let me turn on my perpendicular snap here as well. Oh, it does not want to go in that direction. I think I must have pressed vertical plane instead of horizontal. And we'll work our way around the building. And I'm doing this because it's going to help the end results of the render. So we've got all these other pieces to fill in. I'm not going to fill those pieces in right now. I'm just trying to get the walls in. But if I were doing this in a final version, I would spend the time and actually fill those all in. Try this one more time. Actually, I'm going to do a surface from 3 or 4 corner points because that one has a little bit of an angle to it. And there we go. So I filled those in. Okay. So like I said, that part is technically optional, but I think it helps when you go and fill those in a little bit. So now we have to think about if we want light shining through the walls, if we want it shining through the windows, what are we going to do to block that light? So I'm going to go ahead and type back in show. So I get everything back. And for right now, I can actually turn off that big plane. We don't need that. I'll just go ahead and turn that off. And that was my section plane from before. That could actually be deleted. We don't need that. There we go. And so a couple things. One, I want the glass to become transparent. So I can go through and I can make sure that I'm selecting the glass and applying a transparent material. And 2, I want the walls in this upper section to all become transparent visually, but opaque to light, which is that fake material, that material that I call see-through. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to do this in the side view because it's always a lot easier to do in the side view. I'm going to go ahead and select everything right down to there. I'm going to select everything like that, and then I will go find my glass, wherever I have glass in this. So let's take a look here. Be helpful to make this a little bit bigger so I can see more. There's one with basic glass in it, so we'll turn that off. Another basic glass. And I feel like there's still more glass somewhere. That's the ocean. All right, I think that's it. I think that's all of it. So what I've done is I've turned those off so I don't accidentally select them. And then I'm going to apply that see-through material to these materials. So this is a material that you can download off the website. And I've already loaded it because I worked, I think I did. Nope, I haven't loaded it yet. So let me go ahead and load it. It is, however, if you're looking for it, it's available on Canvas. So you can download it. You can also create it yourself. I'm going to go ahead and open it. And let me go into my flash drive. And let me go into V-Ray. And it's going to be under, for me, it's under special materials. And there it is, the see-through. And there it is, see-through VR mat. We'll go ahead and click on open. And that then opens up the see-through material right there. So I can then go ahead and apply that to my objects. So I'm going to right click on it and say apply to selection. And that's going to apply the see-through material to this entire set of objects. Now, at this point, if I wanted to see the glass, and I wanted to actually show it as glass as opposed to just having the layers off, I could go ahead and just hide that part. Oops, I have to be on it here. I could go ahead and just hide everything that I saw, and then I could turn back on those two layers with the glass. So there and there. The materials on the bottom are just fine, but now I can select the materials up on top, and I can do that right there. Now all those materials, they need to just be transparent because they're above where my cut line would be. So let's go ahead and go back to V-Ray into my asset editor, and I'm just going to create a new basic material. So let's go to materials here. I'm going to go to generic, and I'm going to call this one transparent. And with that transparent, all I'm going to do is go to the opacity and make it completely transparent. Once I have that, I can right click on it and I can say apply to selection. And now all of those are going to be transparent. So at this point, we can go ahead and jump back into my rendered view. We can type in show, and we're going to get the rest of my building. So at this point, if I were to render, the upper half of my building would be gone. I have override materials on from last class. My mistake. Let me go back into my settings, and we need to turn off that material override. There we go. Let's try it again. So bear with me while this starts. Oh, I should have, the size of the rendering is ridiculously large too. So let me edit that just so we can not wait here all day. Go to render output, and let's drop this to be smaller just so you can see it. And let's try that render again. So you can see that the top part of my building is just distinctly missing. Right? However, if we look inside the building, we can see that the shadows are being cast as if the whole building was there. We can see the lights on, for example, coming through the window, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this render. We don't need it to, actually it finished, that's fine, in its poor quality. There we go. And now that is set up to be a photorealistic rendering versus just one that is a clay rendering. And this comes down to a matter of preference. If we wanted the rest of this to show up as clay, we could set the rest of the materials as clay or some kind of a grayish white. So let's go ahead and let's do that. So once again, I will select all the materials, this time all the materials from below. We will again turn off those two glass layers there and there. And then we will go ahead and make all of these kind of a generic white material. Let's go back to materials, and we're going to create a generic. There we go. And we'll call this clay. And this is just going to have a very, very light gray to it. Maybe something like that. I could go all the way to white. We'll see how it turns out. And I'll right click on it and say apply to selection. So now everything below this has that gray on it. I'm also going to use this upper part of the terrain here, there and there, and I'm going to apply that to this clay as well. Let me go ahead and apply to selection like that. Okay, so now that has the clay. We can go ahead and we can select everything. So let me select everything. I'm going to hide it. And then I'm going to turn back on those two sets of windows there. And I'm going to select everything that's lower in my windows. Hold on a second. I need to see where I am here. All right, so let's pick all of this, but I'm going to turn off that basic glass. That one we're going to hide. All right, and get those pieces as well. Go ahead and hide those. Okay, then I'm going to turn back on the basic glass there and there, and I'm going to select all of that. There's all my glass, and that could either go back to the glass material, which would be fine, or I can make that transparent as well. I'm going to leave that as its basic glass material. It is. So let's go ahead and show. Now everything's back, and the bottom all should be that white clayish material. So if I went back to this view and we were to re-render it, it's going to speed up. And we're going to get it as if it were kind of this clay material, which is working really nicely as our background for our images. Okay, so all that being said, I may need to adjust the exposure a little bit, but we could also post-process that a little bit in Photoshop if necessary. It's time to establish the top view. Okay, so we've worked to get our section view. We've gotten all of that put together, but now we need to look at it from a top view standpoint. So if I go to set view and then I go to top, right? Obviously we're in the top view, but we're not zoomed in on our building just yet. And that is our previous Make 2D. There's our building right now. So once I zoom in on it, right? Maybe it's about like that. I'm going to go ahead and save this view so I can come back to it later. I might pan just a little bit to center this. The other option would be to select it all like that, and then do a zoom selected to give us kind of a view. I like to have a little bit of context around it. So probably something about like that. And then I'll save this view. So I'm going to go to set view, named views, and we're going to save this as our floor plan. We'll go ahead and say, okay. So I now have that set as our floor plan layer. Okay. And with that floor plan layer set, I can always come back to it. That's important. But I also need to know what the view looks like. So I'm going to go up into set camera. And I'm going to go to show camera. Now, remember, when I show camera in this floor plan view, it's going to show up in the other views, like this one, not in the view itself. So with that, I'm going to turn off my end and my perpendicular snap. I'm going to switch over into wireframe so we can see that a little bit better. And I will turn on only my point snap. And from here, I'll create a rectangle that represents the viewport. So there's a rectangle from 3 points. And let's orbit around. Oops, I'm in SketchUp mode here. My bad. Okay, let's come back to our rectangle from 3 points. We'll snap to that point, and somewhere in here, there's a point in the middle. And so we're going to have to sort out where that point is. Looks like it's right there. Okay. Then we can take that rectangle and we can scale it by 2. So I'll type in scale. It's a regular scale. I'll pick this corner right there, and then I'll say by 2. And now it's the full size of my viewport. Remember, that's important as part of the Make 2D process. So now we have that viewport set up. We can see just the whiskers of it around the outside of this floor plan view. So let's go ahead and double click on floor plan, and then let's do our Make 2D of this view. So I'm going to deselect everything, and then I'll type Make 2D. Select objects to draw. I'm going to type in all, followed by enter. There's all of my objects. I'm going to go ahead and press enter one more time. And that'll bring up my dialog box here. So we have our view. That's what we're exporting. I'm not going to export the hidden lines in this case. I'm just going to export the lines themselves. Okay, now I do also have the option to maintain source layers or not. I'm going to just keep the objects the way they are. I'm not maintaining the source layers, though some people may want to do that. It gives you a little bit finer control when we move over into Illustrator. I'm going to go ahead and say OK, and it's going to make the 2D version. And I just realized that I made a mistake here in that I didn't hide the top part of the building just yet. So that make 2D is actually incorrect. So we have to let it finish. I'll see if I can escape out. There we go. Perfect. So let me go back from floor plan. Let me go back into my right side view. And we need to hide this upper part of geometry. So let's go right there. Go ahead and type in hide. Now we're back to where we're seeing just the floor plan. There we are. The only other thing that may be relevant is I may want to show the rest of this topography. The other thing that I could do if I wanted to is I could actually contour this little bit of topography to give myself some contours. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Let's go through that process too. Let's do, I'm going to go back to show. Here we are. And let's do, I'm going to take this rectangle here, but in this view, and I'm going to project it onto the surface. 2, 3. There's my surfaces. The reason that I'm doing this is I'm going to split off this part of the surface, so I'm only contouring that section. I'm only contouring what my view would be. Okay, so I have that. Let's go ahead and use that as a split. Oh, whoops. Let me escape out. Let's do a split. We're going to split all of these objects. All right, that's what we're splitting. And we're going to split it with that rectangle that I just created. It's this rectangle right there. And there we go. I've got the whole thing. And we'll go ahead and hit enter. And that then gives me these separate pieces that I can contour. So let's take all of these pieces. And I'm going to join those together. And then I'm going to contour those. Actually, before I do, let's create another sublayer here. Call this contour lines. Let's make that active. And then now we'll go back and actually do the contour. So right there, I'm going to type in contour. My base point will go down here. Let me turn back on my end snap. Right there. Direction perpendicular to contour planes, we need to go straight up. So let me turn on ortho, and we'll go straight up like that. And then our distance between the contours, how about a foot? 1 foot. And we'll go ahead and hit enter. And it's going to build out my contour lines. Probably should have done a foot, might be a little intense. Perfect. So I created all those contour lines. Maybe they are a little bit intense, but it is on the side of a hill. Okay. So now I can do the make 2D. Oh, sorry. I have to hide the top part of the building first. So let's turn off the contours for a second. There we go. I'm going to take everything on the top part here and I'm going to hide it. So I'll go like this. Down to right there. And we'll go ahead and sorry, this should have been exploded again. And let's try that one more time. Oops. top part there. We'll go ahead and hide. But then I'm going to turn back on my contours, which are right there. And then we can go ahead in our floor plan view, and now we can do the make 2D. So I'll go ahead and type in make 2D. Select objects to draw. This is going to be all. I'll hit enter. There they are. And then I'll go ahead and hit enter one more time. And like I said, we're just going to keep the layers the same. We're going to uncheck hidden lines because we don't need those. And we'll call this make 2D. And we'll go ahead and say, okay. And this part can take a little bit of time, so we'll let it finish. All right, looks like it finished. I'm going to go ahead and switch over into the top view. So let's take this view. Let's go to set view, and we're going to go to top. And I'm going to zoom selected. And when we do that, we will see there's our plan view that we just tried to create. Okay, so when I have that plan view, just for clarity purposes, I'm going to go ahead and move it a bit so it's not on top of our other layer here. And then what we don't care about is all the stuff going outside of this. So let's go ahead and trim it. And we can get rid of that piece. And we can get rid of that piece. And I think that's it. So that's good. I'm going to go ahead and select this. And before I do the export, I'm going to move it back on this corner to 0, 0. That'll help with the export process into Illustrator. And then I'll go ahead and go to File and then Export 2D Graph, or still in SketchUp, Export Selected. Sorry. And we'll go into our folder for today. And let's call this plan. There we go. And I'm going to save it as an Adobe Illustrator file, a .ai. Now remember, in my options here, we're going to preserve the scale at 48 to 1. That's 1/4 inch equals a foot. And we'll go ahead and say okay. And then I can go ahead and save that. Okay, all of that looks good. We'll go ahead and say okay. And I'm not quite sure why I'm missing a few little contours right in here. I should have a couple more contours there. It could have been that they were slightly below where my terrain was. Just looking. Yeah, they're there. They must have been blocked by part of the terrain, this part of the terrain probably. But anyway, we can fake those a little bit later. Okay, so I have that Illustrator set up. Let's go back to my floor plan view. Let's go ahead and show. That shows the rest of my building. Remember, that one was already set up for the render, so we should be good to just do a render, which will be like a clay render. I'm going to go into my V-Ray options. I'm going to go into my settings. I said I had to adjust the exposure of the camera just a little bit. Let's go up. Actually, we would go down. Let's go to 13. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on the render icon. I'm doing this small right now just to confirm that I like what it looks like. And then I'll bump up the size. No, that is definitely too bright. Let me stop that. And let me go back to 15. And then I want to double check that there's nothing that shouldn't be there. Yep, all that's good. Let's go back here. And let's go ahead and try the render again. This is again why I try small renders first. There we go. Hard to be patient, but I have to see this in a little bit more detail before I can commit to it. So I guess while this is rendering, I can go ahead and open up Illustrator in the interest of efficiency. So let me open up Illustrator. All right. And then we can go ahead and open up that floor plan file. I'm going to go to open and we'll find on my flash drive. And there's my plan view. We'll go ahead and open that. And once this opens up here, let's press Control-0. Actually, let's press Control-. We can zoom out just a little bit. There we go. We can see our whole thing. I'm going to use the Artboard tool, which is right here on the left side, to match up my artboard with my drawing. There. And we'll come over here and we'll match that up. Once that's done, it's time to go in and make any modifications that we might need to do and or enhance some lines. So there are some lines that can just go away, like this green line here doesn't need to be there. You can go ahead and delete that. We could zoom, we could get rid of this line here. We don't need that line. We also don't need this line or that line right there. Like that. Then we also need to select our objects that are in different colors. So I'm going to go up to the select menu and say select same, and we're going to do stroke color. That selects all of the purples. And from here, we're going to increase the thickness. So I'm going to say 1.5, for example. Actually, let's go up to 2. Those are the walls. And then we'll change the color over here and change the stroke color to black. Oh, there we go. Finally got there. Go to black like that. Then we could come and select these lines. These are my red lines. We'll go to select same stroke color. There they are. And these ones would also be 1.5. So those are the interior walls. And then our color, we would want it to be black. Like that. And so now we're looking at those as thicker and in black. That's good. That's what we're after. We've got a few other little lines here that didn't show up. We can make those corrections. Then we go to Control Plus, like that. And we could modify this, for example. We could come over until it meets there. So we're just making a few corrections like that. This was that couch. We can drop the line weight down on that couch. So let's go to maybe 0.1. So it's thin. That is definitely too thin, and it's also still turquoise. So let's make sure that we're changing the color to black. Here we go. And maybe that's too thin. Let's go to 0.2 or maybe 0.25. There you go. It's a little bit better. And we may find that actually we want all of the lines except for the walls to be thinner. So we could select here and then go up to the select menu and choose same stroke weight. That would select all of the lines that aren't the big thick ones that I've changed already. And we could drop them down to maybe 0.3. And then you can start to see this line weight difference. So there's obviously more that still need to be addressed. You know, this line, for example, we could use the eyedropper and match that thicker line there. We could use that wall there, could use the eyedropper and match that. Oops, that was not the correct line. It may actually be easier to select this one and to just move it over to fill that part of it. Likewise, we could take this line here. There we go. And we could bring that all the way over to there. This line we could match to that. And you can see that I could slowly build this out into its final floor plan version. Let me press Control-0, and we can start to see that as an overall floor plan. Obviously, I would still work with my line weights to kind of improve this, but you get what I'm doing with this. Let's flip back over into Rhino and see how that test rendering is going. Okay, so we're getting a really good sense of what's happening here. We can see into the building. We can see the lights being cast in and how they're being cast on the floor. So all of that's really good. I'm going to go ahead and stop this right now. And then I'm going to go back to my render settings. And I'm going to change my render output right down here. I'm going to increase that size. And again, this is based on the final resolution of what you want. I'm going to go to 1080 on my low end there, and then I'll let this render out. This is obviously going to take a little while. I won't make you sit here and wait for this because obviously it's going to take too long. But we do have the option of also showing right into our Arctic mode what's going on here. So there's our Arctic mode. We're getting a little sense of what's happening. We could go in and adjust. Let me go to Tools. Let me go to Options. And when I do this, I'm going to turn off. Let me open up View and then Display Modes. Let's go to Arctic right there. And I want to turn off the Show Curves. We can take a look. That should look a little bit better. And with those turned off, we could show tangent edges, seams. Yeah, the rest of that looks okay. We could export this as a placeholder right now. So let me go to File. Oops, sorry, I have to say okay there. I'm going to go to the little downward triangle on floor plan. I'm going to go to Capture, to File. And here, I want to increase the size. So we want to go to Custom and then lock it with the viewport aspect ratio. And then we can increase the, I'm going to just increase it to 1080. That's what my rendering is going to be as well. So we'll go ahead and say, okay. And then we'll choose where to save that. And this is, again, a different option for what we're trying to see here. Let's go. This is and back to option 1. There it is. And, you know, in all honesty, this is not necessarily a bad thing. It looks like I may have to do some cleanup around some of the edges here, but we're getting the bulk of it nicely. I can then jump back to Illustrator right here, and we can drop that image in. So I'll go to File and then Place. And there's my plan backdrop option 1. Go to this upper corner. That. And then we can scale this up to the size. Remember, if I hold down Shift, it'll stay in proportions. But because I was careful with my viewports, everything lines up. That does need to go on a layer below my Make 2D layer, however. So I've switched over into layers. I'm going to add a layer. We'll put that image onto layer 2, and then we'll drop it below my lines. So you can start to see that little bit of shadow that's happening on the background. So this would be perfectly acceptable. Realistically, I need to do a little bit of adjustments, maybe in Photoshop on that particular image, just to clean up what's being cut through. If I made all of that nice and white, that would probably help nicely in this view. Okay, so there again, there are options as you start to sort this stuff out. My rendering, let's go ahead and come back to it, is obviously still thinking. So I won't be able to show you that right away, and I'm not going to make you sit around while this finishes. However, I will attach this to the end of the video for today so that you can see what the rendered version looks like versus what the non-rendered version looks like. And so if we jump back into Illustrator, I would continue to kind of tweak and adjust my settings. If I went into Control Plus here, right, I might need to adjust some of these settings. You may find that locking that background is nice because then you can't accidentally select it. Let me go into my properties. This should be down at 0.5. That should be down at 0.5 as well. Like that. So you could continue to work through some of the details on these background images to get your finalized results. I'm not exactly happy with the Make 2D. I feel like it ended up not giving me enough. So in that scenario, maybe doing the hidden line export would help, because then some of these lines that didn't end up showing, like the window lines that should be here as part of the plan, maybe they would show better. I'm going to go back and we'll do the hidden line Make 2D in Rhino just to confirm. Hopefully the rendering will keep working while we're going. I'm going to go ahead and switch back into the shaded mode. There it is. I'm going to switch over into my Make 2D. So nothing selected. I'm going to type in Make 2D. Select objects to draw. This is going to be all. Oops. There it is. I'll press enter when done. And this time I'll turn on the hidden lines layer. And then we'll go ahead and say, okay, this is probably going to take a little bit longer, but we'll let that one go as well. In the meantime, we'll come back and check on our render. Oh, and you know what? I just realized that in the Make 2D, I didn't, did I have the top part of the building hidden? I don't remember. No, so we need to escape out of that. My mistake. So let's turn off those contours. Let me select the top part of the building right there. I'm going to type in hide. And then we'll turn back on those contours. There they are. And we can go ahead and that doesn't matter. Okay, let me make floor plan large, and then we'll do that Make 2D one more time. Make 2D. And I'm going to change this. This is Make 2D final, just so it has a different layer name. We're going to export the hidden lines. And I'm sorry, I didn't do everything. Okay, Make 2D all. There we are. We're going to include the hidden lines. There we are. And we'll go ahead and say, okay. And that's going to take a little bit of time to process. So it's just another option, but this time I'll get those other lines, and hopefully I'll get the rest of the little window lines. So it'll take a little bit longer to do it, but you can certainly see where I'm going with this. I'm going to go ahead and press Control-0. There is, of course, more that I could do in Illustrator to enhance this plan view just a little bit more. I could do some live painting, for example, and I could fill in certain regions, but it's a bit beyond the scope of this class. But if you've taken 135 and you want to spend a little bit more time enhancing your buildings and your floor plans, this is the direction that I would go to kind of get started with that. Okay, so the rest of the day will be for check-ins and for troubleshooting for people. I know there's going to be troubleshooting at this point. So if you're hanging out waiting for help, pay attention to what other people are doing. Maybe you can pick up on something or spend your time working, and I will get to you. It just sometimes it takes time to get through everybody. All right. So with that, I'll let you guys go. I will let these finish processing. I'll save them and then I'll append them to the end of the video so that you guys can see the end products a little bit later on. Okay. And with that, I'll let you go, and we'll take maybe a 5-minute break, come back at 12:15 or so, and we'll get started with questions.